What of Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. Joining me today, Chris Fedor, who happens to be in the Sunshine State of Florida with the Cleveland Cavaliers for training camp at IMG Academy. Also joining us, Jimmy Watkins, cleveland.com columnist. We're holding it down for you guys all the way in Cleveland. But Chris, I want to get your sense of what's going down after day one of training camp, but what's different from last year already? What are you seeing and what's intriguing you from day one?
It was a light session. It was a quick session today. They actually ended it very abruptly, about an hour earlier than anticipated. There was no scrimmaging. I think Kenny Atkinson just recognizes that whether it was the pre-camp get-togethers that they did in New York and Los Angeles, or the other work that they've done at Cleveland Clinic Courts, there just wasn't a reason to go too hard and overdo it on the first day of training camp. So I think they'll probably get into the scrimmaging aspect of it on Wednesday. They'll probably do a little bit more offensive install and some of the stylistic changes that Kenny wants to incorporate. But it was a very, very light session. And the biggest takeaway that I had from today, guys, is that whether it's things that are said, things that we see, or even just DeAndre speaking on his own, a lot of signs are pointing to DeAndre having a big season for the Cavs and having a very, very important role. And it's like, no duh, because Max Strus is going to be out for maybe half the season while he recovers from this fractured foot that he had surgery on. So DeAndre, he said something earlier today that I thought was really, really interesting. He said, at the time that the Cavs traded for me, it felt like they wanted me, not that they needed me. And now they need DeAndre, in part because of Max, but in part because he was supposed to be a big piece of their playoff run, and for a variety of reasons, it just didn't happen. And I think some of the things that stood in their way of fully unlocking DeAndre, they don't have to worry about those things anymore. They have more time together. Kenny Atkinson and DeAndre Hunter spent time together this offseason. DeAndre is more comfortable around his teammates because he's not changing locations, trying to find a house, trying to fit into a team that is number one in the Eastern Conference and in the middle of a winning streak. And all these ancillary factors that sometimes go overlooked, the Cavs don't have to worry about those things anymore. DeAndre doesn't have to worry about those things anymore. And on the previous podcast, we talked about how Evan is talking a different way. He's carrying himself a different way. DeAndre is an introvert by nature, but even he feels more comfortable having conversations with him, listening to his media sessions. He just feels like there's a sense from him of, I belong here, and I know where I belong, and I know that I do fit in this team. And I think last year it was, do I fit in this team? Do they really need the things that I do? They're number one in the Eastern Conference. They're in the middle of a winning streak. I got my buddy Ty here, and that's great. I've got some other guys here that I know, and that's great, but do I really belong here? Is this the best place for me? And I just don't get that sense from DeAndre anymore. I think he's just way more comfortable in this situation.
Yeah, I think the want versus need concept is really interesting. Frankly, the Cavs, and I think us too, like kind of looked at him that way. DeAndre Hunter was a luxury acquisition last year, a cherry on top acquisition. Like he's not the cone, he's not the ice cream, he's not even the hot fudge. He's the cherry on top. This is the guy that will push us over the top in certain matchups, right? And I think DeAndre Hunter can play in all playoff matchups. But the thinking was when we get to like Boston, the Cavs are thinking when we get to Boston, they have more big wings. That's when we'll play this card, or that's when we'll really need to play this card. Of course, DeAndre Hunter will have a role, and this team is a good basketball player, but that's when we'll ratchet up his role. And it was a rocky buildup to that point. To be fair, because in part they weren't practicing very much, and he was not it's hard to join any team on the fly, much less a team that is so set in its system and has a good groove going and is winning a ton, and maybe even a little bit of, why'd we make this move again? We're the best team in the East. Like, that's a completely reasonable stance to have inside that locker room, particularly the way that, Karras and George were loved in that locker room. It went from DeAndre trying to figure out how to fit in the Cavs to the Cavs now trying to figure out how to fit into DeAndre. And we're getting there. That's a good place to be. I also think, to what Chris was saying about finding what DeAndre does best over the course of the season, I think it's going to be interesting to see what the Cavs think DeAndre does best versus what DeAndre thinks DeAndre does best. I think in basketball, those two things are interwoven. The Cavs, when they first traded him, were talking about how he defends 5 positions.
Right.
DeAndre Hunter was also having the best offensive season of his career. It's easier to unlock the defensive potential in somebody when they are getting the ball and feeling involved on offense. And I don't think that was always the case last year. So hopefully this is the meeting in the middle.
And guys, I want to get back into kind of a little bit of the nuances of today's training camp practice, because I know it was short, but apparently after reading the transcript from Kenny Atkinson today, they had a divided drill where they were focused on the fast break, the transition, and where they wanted guys to be at. And obviously we had this conversation with Kenny Atkinson last year about how he kind of was mimicking what Eric Spoelstra was doing with the LeBron James era Miami Heat teams with the Mack truck lane, where he had none of the power forwards or centers kind of running through the lanes and all that entails, but wanting to spread the offense and making sure that everybody had a clean look and it was spaced, even in transition. It was orchestrated, it was clean, and all these different things. Chris, what did you see when you were there, and how that was being incorporated into the drills that they were doing today, even though it was a short practice?
I mean, there's an emphasis on playing even faster than they did last year. And, there are a bunch of stats in the NBA that some teams use and some teams don't. Some teams value and some teams don't. But pace is one that teams do look at. It's not the end all be all. It's not the thing that tells you how fast you're playing, how quickly you're getting into your sets, how quickly you're getting shots up in the half court and stuff like that. But it is a decent measure, and the Cavs were 10th in pace during the regular season. They were 6th of 16 teams in the playoffs. And it's clear from Kenny Atkinson and from the players that they want to play faster. And that doesn't mean get it across half court and start jacking up shots or looking for shots that early into the shot clock. Look, if they're there and it's a good shot and it's in rhythm, all right, you're going to take it. But I think the whole thing was the Cavs understand that teams are going to key in on Darius and Donovan, the two primary ball handlers, and they're going to try and make other guys initiate offense. And they're going to try and take the Cavs out of their rhythm and out of their flow. So they're going to give opportunities. Whoever it is that is closest to the basketball is being instructed to grab the ball and get it in as quickly as possible. And sometimes it's going to be Donovan, and sometimes it's going to be Darius. Other times it's going to be Sam Merrill. Other times it's going to be Evan Mobley. And I think there's this collective belief that they have a bunch of different guys that, because of all the work that they've done throughout the course of this offseason, and Kenny Atkinson even said, one of the points of emphasis that they had for Evan Mobley, they outlined a different blueprint for every single player during their exit interviews. And one of the points of emphasis for Evan Mobley was ball handling. And that kind of drove the way that he approached his offseason and some of the stuff that he did out in LA with his trainer, Olin Simplis. But there's a collective belief that they need more guys to create, initiate, bring the ball up the floor against pressure. And if it's Evan Mobley being pressured by a power forward or a center, that's not TJ McConnell. That's not Alex Caruso. that's not, one of these pesky on-ball defenders that can pick you up 94 feet, really, really bother you, take you out of your offensive flow, get you into your sets slower and all that kind of stuff. So, the game that they were doing today was how quickly can you outlet it and how quickly can you get the ball to a certain space. And if you got the ball to that certain space in a certain amount of time, you earned more points. So the points weren't coming from making baskets, 2s and 3s. The points were coming from, are you doing the things that you need to do with the kick aheads and the kick across and stuff like that? And if they did it in a certain amount of time, quickly, because everything that they want to do is quickly, they got more points. So that's just a window into kind of like the drastic measures that they're taking, because this is the time of year. It's training camp. Every single team in the NBA is going to say, hey, we want to play faster. Hey, we want to push the pace. Every single team. You can find any team that is having a training camp right now, and they're all talking about that because that's today's NBA. But when you start to hear those things and then you see the quote unquote drastic measures that the Cavs are taking to implement those kinds of things, you start to say to yourself, okay, maybe it's not just training camp fodder.
First, I want to make sure that people understand. Like when the Cavs say pace, we can have another conversation about how to define pace. That's another podcast entirely. But generally, why it's good to have high pace. One, if you have more possessions, gives you more runway on the law of averages, right? So over the course of X possessions, you shoot 50%, or if let's say you shoot 30% and a half, you get more chance of a bounce back if you're playing faster, getting more possessions up, right? The other thing is, it's just good to get into your offense quicker. One doesn't necessarily mean fast break. It just means, can we have an action going by like 20 on the shot clock? It's not just about that action or how set the defense is, though it is kind of about that. It's also just like, if that doesn't work, can we do other stuff? And if you're, using all of the 8 seconds that sometimes it takes to get past an Alex Caruso or an Andrew Nemhard, you're just up against it with the clock, right? That being said, when I was reading Chris's pace subhead in his story today and hearing him talk just now, is 2 words in my head: Lonzo Ball.
Mm-hmm.
Lonzo Ball, I just looked this up on Cleveland Glass. First of all, aesthetically, you're going to notice it immediately. He's one of the best and most willing hit-ahead passers in the league. He's a way above average rebounder for his size. He's going to be one of these guys that Kenny's going to be asking to grab and go, and he is a good generator of pace with the ball in his hands, but he's an elite, one of the best that I've seen, generating pace by just turning, throwing. Like the outlet pass stuff, the drills you run when you're 10 years old. Lonzo Ball, when the Cavs were playing this game, whoever had Lonzo Ball on their team was probably winning. He's just really good at this stuff. And like to put it in context, on Cleveland Glass, Lonzo Ball has played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 real NBA seasons. Technically more than that, but he's been hurt, right? In 4 of those seasons, with him on the court, the transition frequency increase has been in the 90th percentile or better. This dude equals pace. When you put him on, it's in every sense of the word. When Lonzo Ball's on the court, you're going to get more stops because he's a good defensive player. When Lonzo Ball's on the court, you're going to rebound better because he is an elite rebounder at the guard position. And when Lonzo Ball gets those rebounds, your offense is going to start faster, both because he's going to push the ball or he's going to throw the hit ahead. That's above all else. It's great the Cavs are committing to this. And I love the idea of Evan Mobley taking the ball off the court against a lumbering big man who's not quick enough to pressure him. Or maybe Evan Mobley could just dribble past these guys. That's something that I would like to see more of. DeAndre Hunter is another one of those guys. You want to feel involved, DeAndre? Get the rebound, just go. And then let's see what happens. But Lonzo Ball is the guy that makes me believe this is more than just your usual training camp fodder, because for his entire career, literally as a rookie, when he was on the court, the Lakers were in transition 2.5% more often. That was the 91st percentile in the league. He's just been doing this his whole life.
Yeah, and I think that's a great example of why they went and got him, right? Because of how he seamlessly fits into this offense, how Lonzo is a guy that can be a connecting piece. And no matter what lineup or what 5-man unit Kenny Atkinson puts him inside of, like that unit is already going to have its identity based on what Lonzo is going to be able to do defensively and offensively, right? And then obviously we talked a little about the Evan Mobley aspect of this, but simply having the juxtaposition of being able to ball handle at a better capacity, and there have been multiple people that have talked about Evan Mobley's ball handling being to a higher tier than it was in years past, but also understanding where the spots are. Because remember last year, we were talking about the difference between J.B. Bickerstaff's offense and Kenny Atkinson's offense, and basically what that meant in transition, what that meant in the fast break was instead of you running the ball up the court, passing the ball and doing the kick aheads that get the ball faster to their spots. And I think there's now time for, okay, we knew we had to get the ball up the floor, but we know that we have to get it to a certain spot, right? And I think that's what's been most important for this team and the growth aspect of it, because they didn't really have that in mind. It was just like, get the ball up and figure it out as it goes. Now, if you have the optimal spaces, you understand where people want the ball, especially DeAndre Hunter in that conversation. You know where he wants the ball, other than Ty Jerome just being the person that knew where DeAndre wanted the ball. Now you have everybody on the court knowing where he wants the ball, what he's going to want to do with it in any given scenario. And that's what this summer has been. That's what training camp is for. And obviously the Cavs have talked about they didn't really implement any offense yet, but it's the minutia of the game, of the sport, that they are trying to implement, because all of these guys are high-level basketball players. We understand that. But if they can win in the little areas, it's going to help elevate their game, especially when it gets to playoff scenarios. But that's a long way down the road.
Yeah, and as Jimmy said, this is a multiple action offense. This is continuous flow, continuous movement. And another difference between this offense and the one with JB Bickerstaff is when things broke down in JB's offense, their solution was always, all right, we're just going to run a high pick and roll. Jarrett, come up top. Evan, come up top. Give the ball to Darius Donovan, and they're just going to run a high pick and roll. And everybody knew it was coming. It was just so predictable. And look, it was effective at points, but when you got into a 7-game series and it was all about, exploiting weaknesses and scouting reports and playing the same team over and over and over again and developing different tactics and strategies that are going to counter what another team does best and take away what another team does best, the Cavs just didn't have other places to go. And that's the thing that Kenny is trying to build. A level of versatility, a level of diversity, being multiple, and with Evan Mobley expanding his role, with Lonzo Ball in an expanded role, with the versatility of somebody like Larry Nance Jr. Part of the reason why they can do this is yes, Kenny is a better offensive mind, but the personnel makes it more possible for them to be the kind of offense that they want to be. And I'm fascinated to see. Last year, it was the second best offense in NBA history. I'm fascinated to see where it can go and how much better it can be. Because you don't have to reestablish something. You don't have to completely overhaul what you were doing. It worked to a really, really high level. But if you can make little tweaks and if you can make different enhancements, what does that mean to an already historically great offense? And obviously, not having Max Strus for a long stretch is going to be something that they have to navigate. And Darius Garland probably missing 10 to 15 games and maybe not being on the floor to debut until around Thanksgiving. That's something that they're going to have to navigate. But thinking about the different possibilities that now exist based on the new personnel and the skill sets that they have and the versatility that they have, from a Cavs perspective, it's really, really exciting to think about those things.
Jimmy, what do you think of just how DeAndre is going to be not only implemented into the offense, but like how he is talking about the want versus the need aspect, which is important, but also just wanting to be more of a vocal leader. He said that in his interview today, that he wants to be more of a vocal leader, especially with Max Strus being out. And I think that's important because it shows that he feels confident in his role with this team. He understands what he needs to do on the floor, but also what that means for him as one of the top 7 players on the roster and his importance, especially if he's going to be in the starting lineup, and adding on the fact that the injured players are going to be 2 of their most vocal and high caliber players, especially a captain on this team when we talk about Darius Garland.
I think that's another training camp bingo spot that we can cover. We want to play faster, and player X wants to be a more vocal leader. Everyone says it. It's a good thing to strive for. We'll see. I'm loving everything that I'm hearing about DeAndre Hunter, feeling more comfortable in the locker room. Kenny going out of his way to build trust there. He's still very new to this team, and it's hard to take on leadership responsibility when you're that new. That's a great thing to aspire to, but we know that he has an idea of what he wants and what the Cavs want. Let's see how that plays out, and then go forward. Like, he still has some equity to build up with this team that's long. Now, for sure, like guys at his position or near, like other wings, young guys, talk him up, no doubt. But particularly given his introverted nature, I wonder how soon we're going to see, him taking on that mantle in this system. That's not knocking him. That's just the reality of how people work and how this like Donovan's going to be a big voice. Evan Mobley is the other big voice. They're trying to develop. Jared Allen. Please, Kenny's pleading with them at the end of last regular season. Talk louder when you're on defense. You're the anchors. Please yell. Just yell your name, anything. So we'll see about that. Again, good goal to aspire to, but I think that's a ways away. I do want to say to what Chris was saying about year 2 of this offense is also it's Kenny and he's, famous for being a maniacal film guy. He's been watching actions all summer long, seeing how people have defended him. Where did we get bogged down in the playoffs? They're going to develop some counters. They're going to put some tweaks in there with new stuff. And the stuff that already exists, the guy, Darius was saying this at media day, the stuff that already exists, you're just going to understand it better because you've done it more and you've repped it all summer, right? And you've been watching. You have more concrete examples to look at over the summer, right? So I think there's a ton of room for growth there, and connecting that to the pace thing, like how this offense is supposed to work is that even if you defend it well for 15, 20 seconds, it's so mentally and physically taxing that eventually you're going to, if the Cavs run enough stuff, if they're able to get enough actions off, you're going to make a mistake. It's just impossible to hold up forever. Whether you lose track of somebody, of whom I'm supposed to go with on the screen, or you just run out of gas, like that's the stuff, the familiarity with the offense that I think that, that 0.5 seconds here where you understand what you need to do, 0.5 seconds here where you see a read better, like you add that up over the course of mostly a roster that's all coming back, like that might add up to an extra action per possession, and over a game, a season, that adds up to a lot.
And the other thing, guys, is we've talked about this on the podcast. One of the things that Kenny loves to do most is the mad scientist stuff. So when there are these situations that he has to navigate at the beginning of the year, or there are these changes that the team has made when it comes to personnel, it makes him really, really dig in. And it gets him really, really excited to see what he can come up with. Lineups, combinations, sets, all that kind of stuff. I mean, if you think about the second unit specifically, it was just going to run through Ty last year. Ty had that built-in trust with Kenny. He was the September MVP. He was somebody who had this irrational confidence that appealed to everybody on the roster. So there wasn't like too much that he was going to do within those lineups, because it was just based on the personnel that he had, it was just going to run a certain kind of way. Now he's looking at it saying, hey, I don't know what it's going to be like with Lonzo running that second unit. I don't know what it's going to be like with Larry Nance Jr. and all of his versatility and his skill set. I don't know what it's going to be like with him in that group. So I think there's a level of excitement and intrigue from Kenny of having to figure out how this offense is going to function and how different this team is going to be, not simply because of some of the personnel enhancements this offseason, but because one of his ball-dominant, high-usage players in Darius Garland is going to be missing at the beginning of the year. And what does that do for the offense? And can it evolve to a level that it can still do that stuff that they're going to have to do at the beginning of the season without Darius? Can they trickle that stuff in once Darius comes back, once Max comes back? And how does that all blend together? And you just sense from Kenny of kind of like him in his lab, like Pinky in the Brain back in the day, saying like, oh, this is going to be great. We're going to take over the world with this sort of thing.
What do we do? What do we do every day, Brain?
That's exactly right. I'm glad you picked up on that. Very good, Jimmy.
I think all that all goes hand in hand with like play calling, right? Because we've had this conversation about Kenny trying to do this give and take, and then also implementing more of, hey, this is exactly what we're gonna do, so we can get to this action, so we can get to where we want, so we can get this person the ball in any given scenario in any given game. But also to that point, DeAndre Hunter mentioned that it takes like an entire training camp to learn a play, right? Because of all the intricacies that there are, the amount of people that can be subbed in and out, where you got to remember who's going to be coming around this screen, who's going to be doing the pin down, all of these things. What do you guys think about just the level of thought that is being put into this training camp? And obviously, Jimmy, I want you to get into this a little bit, just the play calling aspect of it. But as DeAndre is saying, trying to break it down and figure out how long it takes, especially because when he got traded here, the one practice before the playoffs, you didn't have that availability. Now you do, and now it's more so, I don't even want to apply this play unless I know it's 100% going to be right and go the way we want it to.
Well, I think when you talk about what the new starting lineup is projected to be, when you don't have Darius and Donovan together, and you don't have them being high usage guys and ball dominant guys and volume scorers, there's more of a place for DeAndre, and it should fit. It should work because he is more perimeter oriented offensively. As so many people have said, very few guys on this roster have shot the ball better than DeAndre throughout the course of this offseason. And if you think about the way that he shot the ball with the Cavs, I mean, there were times that we were talking about a 50% three-point shooter saying to ourselves, wait a minute, this needs to regress a little bit. Is he really this kind of shooter? So he can space the floor. He can knock down threes. He is more comfortable, it seems, like on the perimeter. But like if they have to mix something in, he can play in isolation. He can play at the elbow. He can play in the post. I don't think there are going to be spacing issues that the Cavs are going to run into. Like, obviously, when you're talking about Max, there's a different level that he brings from a spacing standpoint and from an attention standpoint, and the kind of movement that he brings to the offense and stuff like that. But DeAndre should fit, I think.
At first, for sure. This is what I was getting at. I was thinking about earlier. Now we're back to Kumbaya County. It's all good right now. In training camp, when DeAndre Hunter knows he's getting 8 more shots that he wasn't getting last year, he's starting. You know, him and Kenny had this conversation. Do you want to start or come off the bench? He said, I want to start. He's starting. He's starting because Max Strus is hurt. He's getting these extra shots because Max is hurt and Darius is going to be hurt to start the season. And to Chris's point about like all this fun stuff that Kenny comes up with second units, and can you apply those wrinkles when everyone's back? Can DeAndre Hunter still be as comfortable as he's going to be? I think DeAndre Hunter is going to look. I'm with you. I think he's going to look awesome to start the season. But what happens when everyone comes back? Right. What happens when Max comes back and he's the natural starter? that position? What happens when Darius Garland comes back and he needs his 15, 16, 17 shots a game? Where is DeAndre Hunter then? And then, that goes way beyond understanding the one play or every play. It's just now we're kind of close to the ecosystem that he joined last year, where it's like, okay, now you go back over there. We're going to, maybe there's still, obviously without Ty Jerome, there's still going to be more shots to go around, but there will be a pretty abrupt adjustment in the middle of all this. And I think that's kind of interesting.
All right, guys, don't want to get into too much after day one. We still got a lot of learning to do when it comes to this team. So with all that being said, that'll wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs insider and interact with Chris, me, and Jimmy by subscribing to Subtext. This is where you can send in your weekly Hey Chris questions so we can get your thoughts and your questions about what's going on in IMG Academy in Florida and what this Cavs team needs to improve on before preseason and the regular season get started. To do all of this, sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word STOP. It's easy, but we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me, Chris, and Jimmy. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through Subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.